Okay, guys, good evening and thanks for joining this webinar session on buyer persona. This is the third module we're going to take as part of the e-commerce and digital marketing bootcamp. Normally, the buyer persona is basically being introduced after the e-commerce introduction and the branding development, and also before you start working on your website. Again, I will assume that most of you here are freelancers. Some maybe would like to use the learnings here in doing digital marketing for their businesses. The buyer persona, it answers the question like, how well do you know your customers? Do you really understand their interests, their goals, and their needs? Also, how old they are, something like that. So it's kind of a mixture of demographics, firmographics, and everything about a certain target customers or set of customers. As digital marketers, you need to learn about buyer persona so that you are able to position your products or what you are selling to the right customers. Okay, so our objectives for this session, for you to understand what buyer persona is, and also buyer persona is important in e-commerce and digital marketing. You would be able to learn how to use buyer persona and how to create a buyer persona. All right? So what is buyer persona? As you can see here, it says a buyer persona is a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer based on market research and real data about your existing customers. Okay, so semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer. In other words, it's just kind of an assumption based on data that you have. And some marketers normally call buyer persona as marketing personas, or for designers, they call this as user persona. Some call it as customer's persona. So it's important to remember, guys, that personas are not just for marketing. It can be used across the board, across your entire sales funnel or your funnel strategy, and let everyone in the team know who they are and pass those information to the rest of your team, be it on the marketing, on the sales, and those people involved on the actual services. Okay, so as I've said earlier, semi-fictional representations. So normally we call personas or buyer personas like this one: freelancer Jan, manager Roy, teacher Diana, driver Joshua, engineer Mike. As you can see, we label the names with the particular industry they are in. The purpose of that is for us to be able to easily identify when we have so many different buyer personas. Okay? Okay, so why use a buyer persona? Normally, common mistakes among digital marketers is just they build the website, they initiate the campaign right away without even knowing who their target audience are, or who are those people na gusto nilang at least siguro makuha as a customer. It's very important to know the buyer persona so that you're able to establish your business, so that you can segment the audience and create stronger marketing campaigns, because you are able to identify the target market before you create the contents. And it would be easier for you, like if you are going to build an e-commerce website, it would be easier for you to design the look and feel of the website of your target market. Yung iba, gagawa lang ng website, hindi pa alam kung sino yung gagamit, or at least parang may assumption na the target market or the target audience would be doctors, and then later on may changes like, ay mali, kailangan pala nasama natin yung mga nurses. Yung parang gano'n na mangyayari. So it's very important to establish the buyer persona first before you are able to go into that content development. The more you know your target market, the better it is for you to perform the digital marketing approach. And the buyer persona will also help you to have more focus and clear targeting of your contents. Okay? Do you know your audience? Normally kasi, pag nagdi-digital marketing, yung iba, hindi nila alam yung target market. So, normally, when you want to know your audience, the strongest buyer personas are those that comes from market research, actual market research. It could be through interviews or through surveys or You can have like different lead nurturing emails. Maiintindihan mo kasi yung persona ng target market mo. So when you do the buyer persona, you have to get the audience information ahead before making the actual website. Okay, so we're going to have a workshop on the market research later on. How to use a persona. So again, as I've said earlier, you have to learn your ideal customers, their challenges, their goals. At the most basic na level, personas allow you to personalize or target your marketing for different segments of your audience. For example, instead of sending the same lead nurturing emails to the same group of people, you can segment them by using the persona so that you are able to tailor the content or the messaging to those different personas. For example, sa TekWorx, as you can see, when we send message through Messenger, you'll notice that some of those messages are sent only to a select group of people. Like, we are able to identify who among you were able to take the e-commerce introduction. We're able to identify who among you were able to take branding development na module. And when we communicate, normally, nakasegment na kasi yung mga audience na yun. So we develop contents only for those different particular segments. And as we move forward with this bootcamp, the more na you participate or the more na may sumasali sa webinar, the more nagkakaroon ng mga additional audience, the more that we learn about them, how they interact or how they participate. And later on, we're able to deliver the right messages for them. So how to identify buyer personas? Again, you have to identify to learn the demographics or firmographics. Demographics basically is kind of statistical data relating to the population or particular groups within that population. And firmographics, normally, it's more on the firms or companies. So it refers to the attributes of firms that can be used to aggregate individual firms into meaningful market segments. Demographics means people, and firmographics means companies or firms. Also, you have to identify their pain points, the values, the research habits, also the psychographic differences, something like that. You have to identify them as much as possible. The more information you get from your target market, the better. Okay, so when you research the buyer persona, you can use tools like this one and also this one. And also, you can use a certain template for creating buyer personas. We'll discuss that more later on. When you research about your buyer persona, you will have to identify the set of questions for the interviews, for the prospects, or for the referrals. And also, you can research through third-party networks. Like when you run ad campaigns and get data from there, you can also do that. Okay, so how to create a persona? I'm going to demo later on using HubSpot tool and also share you a certain PowerPoint presentation na kind of template. Okay? Take note of this link, bit.ly/download persona template. It will bring you to the page where you can download the template. And this is actually a sample buyer persona that I created for your reference. As you can see here, I named the persona like blogger Alex, and the age is 25 to 34 years old, and highest level of education is associate degree, and he uses social networks like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and Google+. And the industry he belongs in is advertising, and yung organization niya, he only has like teammates of less than 10 people, and their preferred communication. So everything here represents the persona. Now, how are we going to do this? How are we going to create a persona like this one? Okay, so let's do the workshop. So I want you to take note of this website, hubspot.com/make-my-persona. Now, let's try to create a persona. Okay, so say for example, I have this product called e-commerce and digital marketing bootcamp, and I want to market this to certain people who are defined by this particular persona. Now, I'm going to name this persona like digital marketing specialist Ryan. And I'll pick the avatar like this one. Okay. As you go with this exercise, you will notice some tips from HubSpot on the left side, so you can just read it. And for example, I want to identify among you, I must say that majority of the participants for the e-commerce and digital marketing bootcamp are like millennials or people who belongs to the age bracket of say 24 or 25 to, let's see what we got here, 18 to 24, no, 25 to 34 years old. Say, for example, for the e-commerce and digital marketing bootcamp, the ideal target market for us would be those who belong to the age bracket of 25 to 34. Just for example. Now, what is the highest degree or level of school your person has completed? I must say probably most of the participants for this e-commerce and digital marketing bootcamp would be college graduate, most of you probably. Let's say some college, no degree, or associate degree. Let's settle for associate degree. That's the demographic threat, particularly on age and education. Like, what industry do they work in? I would assume na most of you work for different industry, but since you are going to take the e-commerce and digital marketing bootcamp, you will soon belong to the advertising industry. Or let's see what we can see here. Technology, it could be probably offering services, freelance services, marketing. Obviously marketing. It's more on marketing. So I'll select marketing. So what's the size of their organization? So most of you are sole proprietors probably, or you start your business by yourself. So I must say your organization may be like 1 to 10 employees only. Normally, ganon yung mga startups eh. Again ha, I'm creating a persona for my ideal customers who might be interested about the e-commerce and digital marketing bootcamp. Okay, so let's say they work as freelancer. So normally they work by themselves or by yourself. I must say 1 to 10 employees. Okay, so what is their job title? For now, siguro, virtual assistant. Most of you will become VAs if you complete the course. And how is their job measured? Leads generated. If you work like you have clients who want you to do lead generation tasks. Let's try to see, what do you think would be the key metrics, the KPIs for your job? So if I will pick an example like my VA, I must say that her KPI is productivity. And who do they report to? Like the owner or founder. Say, for example, you don't have a boss yet and you want to market yourselves as e-commerce and digital marketing specialist. Normally, wala pa kayong marireportan, di ba? So you have to report to yourself. But here, I am going to assume you might have work after taking this course. That information is still useful. Like if I'm going to market certain products or services to you later on after the bootcamp. So I can have this like report to the owner or to the boss. So what are their goals or objectives? Like for example, sa inyo ngayon, ano yung gusto nyong mangyari? Why you are taking this e-commerce and digital marketing bootcamp? Siguro you want to win online jobs or make money online. So the idea here is I am assuming na you are taking the e-commerce and digital marketing bootcamp because you want to win online jobs or be able to win different freelancing jobs from like Upwork or Freelancer or Fiverr or whichever freelancing sites you want to sign up for. And of course, ultimately, you might want to really make money online on top of what you are doing. For example, if you are employed currently. And what are the biggest challenges of those people na sasali sa e-commerce and digital marketing bootcamp? Say, for example, I must say the lack resources or the lack professional development, lack technical skills. Okay, so we can settle with that for now. And what are their job responsibilities? So when you do the e-commerce and digital marketing, you might be handling different tasks like content creation, website development. So I will just generalize, like say most of you will sell products. Normally kasi, yung mga VAs, yung mga digital marketers, when they work with clients, most of those clients are into e-commerce. And when they handle the account, they're assigned to like managing the Amazon store or managing the Shopify store or managing the WooCommerce store. So the main responsibility of the VA, like for example, you, when you get hired, is to sell products. Okay? Now, the sixth step asks how do they work? How does the target market work, or how they're going to work? So what tools do they use? I must say they probably would need CRM, of course, and content management system. Of course, there's a need for like WordPress, Shopify, or other CMS. Project management, they will do email, invoicing, pwede. Word processing programs, like when you do content development, reporting software, of course, business intelligence dashboards, and accounting. Okay, so how do they prefer to communicate with vendors or other businesses? I will assume na they will use telephone, email, text messaging, social media, and face-to-face. Okay, so I'll go to the next step. Now, what are their consumption habits? How do they gain information for their job? Like you as e-commerce and digital marketing specialist probably will read more about the course, or you will upskill, you will research more about your expertise. I must say research or read blogs, online training like this one. Again, you can put as many information you can when you do the buyer persona, or should I say profiling. And what social networks do they belong to? Like, for example, you guys, I must say most of you belong to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And also, since I'll be teaching you different social media channels, you'll be able to use LinkedIn. And since Google Plus will be ditched out this summer, I can exclude that. And probably you will use also Pinterest. Okay, so this is now the persona. Okay, this persona will serve as a guide for you when creating your contents or when doing the marketing. Normally, yung mangyayari pag wala to, parang na-offset kayo. The buyer persona will serve as a guide na all of your marketing efforts, for example, or your other digital marketing activities has this buyer persona in mind all the time. I hope you got the point there. Okay? Now, this is only one of the many ways to create a persona. There's also another one I'm going to teach you using the template. Like if you want to put details beyond this particular tool is offering. Here's the template. This is how it looks like. I'll just show it to you. So you can jump to this portion. Although you can review the contents, what I have discussed earlier, that's basically the reason why I discussed the presentation faster, because you can read the same contents from this presentation, which I'll be sharing to you. So here's one example on how to use this template. So for example, here, you are going to put the background like this one. Since she's into HR, like HR Sally, something like that. Okay, now you can replace this one. Wait, I'll jump to the other slide na empty. This one. You can use this one instead. But the previous slides can serve as your guide, like for identifying the background, the demographics, and also some identifiers. What are their goals? You put it here. Their challenges. What can we do as a service provider to them? Or if we are talking about selling products later on, what can we do or what can we offer to this particular group of people according to the buyer persona? And there's also the slide where you can put in real quotes coming from your interviews, something like that, or from the surveys. You can also put it here. And the common objections, you put it here also. Why wouldn't they buy your products or service? It's very important that you identify those negative persona. There's buyer persona. There's also what we call as negative persona. But we will dwell more on that later on, probably on another session, because this particular session is more on the buyer persona. But you can put the common objections on the template. You can fill it out because you are able to identify naman the common objections. Like for example, in this e-commerce and digital marketing bootcamp, I must say na one of the common objections probably is that they are very hesitant because they don't have a background in computers. It's very common, right? Or they will say, I don't code. The e-commerce and digital marketing bootcamp is not for me. My potential customers na ganon or participants na ganon. So what you're gonna do is, since you identified that as a common objection, you can create content tailored for this group of people. Like probably you can have an article convincing them about joining the webinar session or the e-commerce and digital marketing bootcamp because it doesn't actually require them to code, or it doesn't require them to have deep understanding about computers. It's a very common objection, and many people or previous participants of the rural impact sourcing technical training can relate that, or many participants of this ongoing webinar maybe can relate that. So if you are hearing this, I can identify that as a kind of aspect of your persona, and probably I can have a content designed for that. So you have to put the common objections here. And lastly, the marketing messaging, the elevator pitch, like how you're gonna pitch your products or services to those people identified or represented by your persona. Okay, so I want you to take this exercise, guys, at your own pace, but I'm hoping that before we touch the WordPress site development and content creation, you already know your buyer persona. Otherwise, you will have a hard time putting in contents because you don't understand or you have no idea what you are doing. That is why we have the buyer persona introduced to you before you are able to do the rest of this. Okay? So I hope you learned something new tonight, and I'll open the session for your questions. From Ria, para rin po bang niche ang buyer persona? Yes, exactly. When you do like niche blogging or niche marketing, you have to use buyer persona also so that you are able to tailor the contents when the time comes na you are doing the content marketing na. So yes, may similarity, Ria. And also, I will encourage you to read this article, How to Create Detailed Buyer Personas for Business. Yes, Ma'am Ador?
Sir, speaking of interview, we fill up the template. Do we interview actual persons, or because what you were doing is you were filling it up yourself, but when we fill it up, do we base it on the actual answers from actual persons, or do we just use our imagination?
Okay, so the buyer persona is kind of more on imagination, right? It's a representation only of group of people. Diba? You have your buyer persona as a representation for a group of people, meaning it may or may not represent them, but based on your own judgment, it could be or it could represent those people. Now, if you are going to do the interview and you're able to get the details like the responses from the interview, that's something that you can use on your buyer persona because that's more valuable because it came from them compared to the assumption by your own, diba? So yes, when you create the buyer persona and you fill out those templates, put those information that you get from actual interviews. It's more valuable because it came from them. It's not an assumption about them. Does it make sense, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Why is it na we're able to finish buyer persona? It's very dependent on your participation. The creation of buyer persona, it involves more from you. You have to really do that. It's not something that I will do for you. It's something that you will do for your own campaigns later on. When you create your website and you put contents and when you do copywriting. So, yes, I'm hoping na I was able to deliver it clearly and you're able to understand the purpose of using buyer persona in e-commerce and digital marketing. Okay, Ma'am Ador again.
Sir, for example, you already have your buyer persona and you are going to use this, like for example, in your marketing campaign. Is there a tool that will help you analyze how to prepare the contents, or will you discuss this later on?
Yeah, we'll discuss that on the latter part, like on these modules, content creation. And also along the way, I'm going to introduce you different tools when doing contents. That's something we cannot tackle for now because as much as possible, we will just focus on the buyer persona creation. But yes, to answer your question, we will have those tools later on.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Again, when you do the content development, don't forget about what you have learned from the branding development na module. Okay? Because as I've said before, as you go with the digital marketing campaigns, you always have to keep in mind those brand fascination advantage you have based on a website. By the way, do you have your brand fascinations already? Because for you to be able to successfully complete this bootcamp, it's very important that you really put efforts, you do the exercises, because that's the way you will be able to learn how to do digital marketing. Yung iba kasi sasabihin na digital marketing is expert, no? Or specialist. Tapos, pag tinanong mo ng mga ganito, hindi nga nila alam kung ano yung buyer persona. Di ba? Kaya, very fortunate for you all that I'm able to really introduce the contents that defines or that will allow you to be digital marketing specialist. Di ba? Naglalabasan ngayon yung mga training sa internet, pero it's not something na parang bitterness. This is the reality. I'll cite one example. There's one kind of digital marketing pro. He's doing lots of paid trainings and claiming being an expert in digital marketing. But when I audit the website, it doesn't even have Google Tag Manager or it doesn't even have Google Analytics implemented on the website. I was wondering how this guy tracking the visitors, something like that. Very simple or very kind of basic audit. And I saw it up front and I was like, how could he claim to be an expert on digital marketing? Diba? I'm not being bitter. I'm just telling the truth. Okay, so from Ralin, sir, is there a minimum number of persona that we should create in order to have a good outcome as basis for the business? Okay, good question. There's no minimum number of persona. You can settle in, like if you are very specific business or if you have very specific product or niche, you can have one or two personas. But if you are like selling or offering different products or services to different people, like you probably have teachers, you have doctors, you have carpenters. Of course, you will have to create individual persona for those groups. And you will create the persona individually in such a way that one persona represent a certain segment of the entire customers or audience. I hope that I was able to answer the question, Ralin. Okay. Yes, Ma'am Ador.
Does the buyer persona have a sort of expiry date, or does it hold throughout since the beginning that you had the buyer persona, sir?
Another good question. The buyer persona might change along the way. Like, for example, if I have developed a buyer persona designed for the participants of e-commerce and digital marketing bootcamp, I can have that persona effective, I can say, for example, until March only, because, it might change, or I can have that throughout the program or throughout the campaign and then just modify it accordingly based on the changes of those potential customers. Nagbabago kasi yung behavior ng tao. Kaya you have to see to it that you are updated. You are able to really see the development of those audience. Para whatever those changes are, you can always modify your buyer persona. So, hindi naman siguro expired yung term, but kind of,
Outdated, sir?
yes. From Ria, Sir, mas okay po ba na mag-based po muna sa buyer persona ang isang e-commerce site or sa products po na gustong i-market? Okay. So, if you are going to do like drop shipping or selling your own products online, you have to work on the buyer persona first. Okay? Because you cannot market a certain product if you don't know the people you want to buy those products. So, yes, the answer is yes. Nakuha nyo yung guys, yung idea why buyer persona. Later on when you create your website, I hope na you are doing it for a certain purpose, like with the target market identified already. Diba? You probably have your website already right now, and then probably it doesn't have any content at all because you don't know what to put there. Diba? Okay, so from Ray-Ban, got to change or revise my site to adapt my own buyer persona in it. Guys, just to be clear, the buyer persona is not about you. It's about your buyers. As much as possible, get details about those potential customers. Okay, so you can ask around, you can interview, like send private messages. For example, you can approach different business owners like, hey, would you guys be interested doing digital marketing for your business? Something like that. And take that question. Most of those respondents said yes. So you have that in mind already. So, my target market are interested in doing digital marketing. So something like that. Okay, guys, thanks for joining this webinar session on buyer persona. I'm hoping to have you join again on the next topics. The next topic would be WordPress site development and security. And this is really very interesting and also very useful for those who don't know anything about WordPress or creating a website or e-commerce website. I'm going to teach you how to do that. And by the way, you will need kind of commodities for that, like domain or web hosting. So I'm gonna teach you that also, how to work on that. Okay, thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this session. Bye.